Last year, there were 4 successful military takeovers across Africa, up from 1 in 2020. Sudan's military detained civilian leaders and seized power in October, about a month after authorities said they had thwarted an attempted coup. In May, Malian soldiers had their second coup in the space of 10 months. This came weeks after General Mahamat Idris Deby seized power in Chad by suspending the constitution and dissolving the parliament. This resurgence in coups across the continent has prompted the UN to call for a return to constitutional order. Experts say the surge in the militarization of politics is influenced by a mix of external drivers and internal factors such as widespread public frustration against corruption, insecurity, and poor governance. Well, for more on this, let's bring in Arise correspondent Mark Bichachi. So good to have you, Mark. And what do you make of this latest issue that we have right now in Burkina Faso, where there's an attempted coup, and then we have lots of Africans, feeling so bad about what's going on in that country?
Well, first and foremost, we need to appreciate the history of Burkina Faso, and since the ouster of their beloved President Sankara, then the 20-odd years of Blaise Compaoré, and then the various coups that were attempted to depose the democratically elected president in the last 6 years or so. This is a country that is facing poverty. This is a country that has Islamic militants in the Sahel region of the country, bringing destabilization to the country. And then we've got those soldiers who are still loyal to Blaise Compaoré, who are trying to make sure that the cases that are being brought up in the coup that took away Sankara does not affect them. They're also being affected by the loss of the power they used to have. And this is the same pattern, a military that is feeling disenfranchised that we are seeing in the Sudan as well. When you look at how the military took over there, you're also seeing the same thing in different places. But the biggest issue here is the history of coups only seems to beget other coups, and then any country that is bedeviled by poverty or extended rules of certain leaders definitely creates an environment for coups. But in Burkina Faso, it is about ex-soldiers, it's about Blaise Compaoré, who's still alive, and it's about raising the ghost, of you will, of Sankara over the nation that is bringing a lot of discordance and unhappiness within the military ranks.
And a lot of persons would want to wonder why West Africa is so much having these military coups, starting from Mali to Guinea, now to Burkina Faso and all of that. This attempted coup has actually brought to the fore the debate on why democracy seems to be failing in West Africa of recent.
Well, it's not really a recent issue. If you look back on the history of our continent, you will find that there's a disproportionate amount of coups within Francophone Africa than there was in Anglophone Africa. Now, this is a combination of factors. Number one, let's remember that the French, from the beginning, wanted to maintain and have a level of control over West Africa. Indeed, it has been proven that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the French were directly involved in putting people in power whom they thought were favorable to the French agenda. On top of that, the French have continued to play as an economic big brother to the region, asking the region to have a currency that is pegged to the French franc and later the euro. Now, what this does is it has given the region a very little economic latitude to make their own great steps or their own great mistakes. Now, all this is underwritten by a French military, heavy French military presence in West Africa. And what that does then is that it brings a lot of, how do I put it, issues for the region in terms of causing instabilities.
Compared to other regions of Africa, especially East Africa where you are, how would you say that the people's reaction is usually like when it comes to these military takeovers?
Well, it is interesting because I have found that generally speaking, countries that have faced coups before have generations within them that remember coups, and therefore they take it a bit more normally. So I'll give you an example of East Africa. Sudan has faced many coups, and therefore we've seen the people of the Sudan go out on the streets because they're not afraid of the military. They've lived under the military for a long time. Now, you look at West Africa, it is almost as if the people there have accepted this as I don't want to say a modus operandi really, but almost a modus operandi because of just the history of coups. And let's not forget that countries destabilize countries. So if you look at the region, you look at where Burkina Faso is, you look at the influence of foreign terror linked to international terror organizations. If you look at all of that happening, you look at even institutions such as Boko Haram and how they have a destabilizing effect across the region, then you realize that West Africa has greater challenges than East Africa in terms of just how all this international play and how these countries are interconnected, not by mostly of their own choosing, but also interconnected by their former colonial master. That interconnection tends to destabilize the country because they're not fully, if I may use the word, independent of French influence. And you've seen it that every time there's a coup, you see the French president has to speak about the coup in Africa, and that really is the biggest sign of the undue
if I may break in,
influence.
Sorry to actually cut you short there. I just want you to talk about the impact of regional interventions whenever there's a coup. Like, for example, ECOWAS has closed its borders against Mali and all of that. What do you make of such interventions, and how can that, in 30 seconds, curb this appetite for coups?
Well, ECOWAS is an interesting African organization because let's remember when a president was removed in office by force by ECOWAS when he had lost an election. So the impact of closing off Mali is already being seen because the military president of Mali already started battling and appointed a prime minister who was civilian. He's still saying that he's shepherding the country towards democratic rule. So ECOWAS, in taking steps towards stopping the militarization of West African governments, is actually having an impact. What it needs to do is to continue to do the same, and also think about using its military together to keep the region more peaceful. I think.
All right, Mark Bichachi, Arise East Africa correspondent, we must thank you for joining us on the show. Thank you so much. Well, that's how it's been for this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Sumna Sambo.